Okay, class, we're now going to talk on histology. This is chapter 4 in the textbook that we're using. Chapter 4. It may be in other chapters if you're using a different book. All right. Histology is the study of tissue. Histo for tissue, ology for study of. I'm going to say that a tissue is a group of cells, now this is kind of my definition, a group of cells of similar embryonic origin. See, I got it underlined. Sometimes with some intercellular substances. Intercellular means stuff between the cells, all dedicated to a common function. Group of cells, similar embryonic origin, sometimes with some intercellular substances, all dedicated to a common function. Now, we said that in many classifications, some have different numbers, but in many classifications, there are 210 different cell types in the human body. Some have a different number as far as class, but this is the one I'm using, 210. But we have 4 tissue types. The 4 tissue types we have are epithelial, connective, muscle, and nerve. Epithelial, connective, muscle, and nerve. Okay, epithelial tissue, we'll see lines or covers or surface. Connective tissue connects. It's kind of like a filler. It's the most abundant in the body. Muscle tissue contracts, and then obviously nerve tissue does what nerve does, to conduct charges. Okay? Now, we're going to examine the underlying words. Okay. A group of cells of similar embryonic origin, sometimes with some intercellular substances, that in red, all dedicated to a common function. Of the 4 tissue types, 3 types of tissue cells are not attached to one another, where the cells have space between them. Thus, they have room to have some substances between the cells. These tissues are connective, muscle, and nerve. When we examine epithelial tissue, we'll find that the cells are attached to one another. So there's no room between the cells. So they would not have any intercellular substances. Okay? A group of cells, here's this, similar embryonic origin. Similar embryonic origin. Similar embryonic origin refers to the formation of germ layers. Germ is not bacteria, it's short for germination layers. Germination layers. Okay? There are 3 germination layers. Germinate means to arise from. To arise from. There are 3 germination layers we'll talk about. Endoderm, mesoderm, and ectoderm. Endoderm, mesoderm, and ectoderm. Okay? Now, embryology is a full college or medical school course to itself. In college, it would be like a 3rd or 4th year course. However, I'm going to subsume embryology into 2 things primarily. Migration and differentiation. Migration and differentiation. Embryology. Okay? I'm going to say embryonic cells move throughout the embryonic body, seeking their adult positions as they move. As they move, they're differentiating. Remember, becoming cell specialized. For example, an endodermal embryonic cell that is intended to be an intestinal epithelial cell would initially be formed in one part of the embryo, but would break free and migrate to the other part and then differentiate into an intestinal epithelial cell. So embryology involves migration and differentiation. Now, the embryonic period in a human is the first 8 weeks. The embryonic period in a human is the first 8 weeks. So after that first 8 weeks, until you deliver your fetus. So that first 8 weeks. Now, I'm just going to give you a little flavoring on this. So, here's the female uterus. Sperm would come up and then go into the fallopian tube. Okay? The female would ovulate. All fertilization occurs in the tube. The female would ovulate. If the sperm fertilized the egg, then the fertilization, if the sperm fertilized the egg, remember in meiosis, we became a 1N, a haploid. So the sperm and egg bring it back to the diploid stage. Here would be the first cell, a zygote, fertilized egg. Okay, 2N, 46 pieces of genetic material, 23 pairs. Then it would start to multiply, because I got to get a bunch of cells. It would continue to multiply as it goes down the fallopian tube, multiply, till you get a bunch of cells. But up to now, all of these are stem cells, totipotential stem cell. Mike, you say, what's a totipotential stem cell? Now, first of all, a stem cell can do mitosis and differentiation. It can make more of itself and then differentiate. A totipotential stem cell means it hasn't differentiated into anything, so none of the genetic material has been closed up. Remember, heterochromatin, euchromatin. So if I pick any one of these cells, it could make an entire body. Totipotential stem cells. Eventually, though, the cells start to migrate, as we see. Okay, let's go to the next picture. They start to migrate. Some of them start becoming the afterbirth. Your afterbirth that implants into the female uterus wall. Right here is where you would be made. So all of these cells here are going to migrate. Some of them will go and become part of the afterbirth as they dig in to the uterine wall. And then right here, this is where you form, known as the inner cell mass, or some call it the embryonic disc. All of this, again, is afterbirth, which would be the amniotic bag, the chorion, and so forth. So see, cells are moving. Now what's going to happen in this right here, you can't see, the cells are going to migrate within the inner cell mass. This migration is going to migrate into layers, germ layers. So right here, on the outer edge of this area here, we call it ectoderm. In the middle, mesoderm, and on the inner area, endoderm. So this migration, so the first thing we've got in this is to get the cells to migrate into these three germination layers. So then it becomes a trilaminar. See, here's the amniotic bag. And right here is the person developing. Here's the yolk sac. It regresses. So ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Okay. Now, we go back that we have 210 different cell types, but only 4 tissue types. Okay. Here would be some of the different types. Okay. So here's using now what we talked about in that migration, because I said, let's go back to the definition. Similar embryonic origin. What do I mean? Similar germ layer. See, the embryonic origin, I just had to wait to explain it, means similar germ layer. Similar germ layer. So I go back here now. Go back here. Let's go here. Tissue origins involving germ layer. Epithelial tissue can originate from all 3 germ layers. It's the only one. If it's, remember, epithelial lines are covers. Epithelial lines are covers. Okay. If it's the lining inside blood vessels, the endothelium, it originates from mesoderm. If it's the inside lining of your gastrointestinal tract, intestines and so forth, it arises from endoderm. If it's the skin, which covers, it arises from ectoderm. So epithelia arises from all 3 germ layers. That's the only one. Connective tissue, all of it arises from mesoderm. Muscle arises from mesoderm. And your nervous tissue arises from ectoderm. So that's where I said similar embryonic origin. Similar embryonic origin. Go back and study it. Okay? Epithelial tissue means epi. That means it's the top layer. It's the top layer. Now I'm going to start another PowerPoint to discuss epithelia. Okay.